I'm here to give you a slightly different perspective, but hopefully an optimistic one about how we bring what is really important to all of us here to life. So I'll give you a little bit about us, and then I'll talk about a couple of projects. So Landsec is one of the largest property investment and development companies in the UK. We develop and operate places all across the country, from Glasgow to Portsmouth, from Kent to Cardiff. We're the largest listed retail landlord in the country. And in any one year, 120 million people visit our places, twice the UK population almost. So you could say that we're at the front line of the subject of the discussion today. We create, how we create the kind of buildings and places that make people happy, inspire them, and gives them the tools to build better lives. As property developers, running a company owned by thousands of shareholders listed in the stock market, we build in order to provide our investors with an appropriate return on their money. It's not unreasonable, right? Our shareholders, the institutional ones who are taking care of all of our pensions, and the thousands of individual investors have a right to expect us to work as hard as we can on their behalf to protect and enhance their investment. If we don't, something very simple happens. They take their investment somewhere else. In pursuit of this responsibility, what's often wrong in our sector is that we spend too much time buried in spreadsheets, and we forget what it is that really creates value we are trying to measure, that the buildings and the places we make are valued by the people who use them. All of life happens in and around buildings. We're born, we grow, we learn, we're sick, we get healed, we eat, sleep, work, grow old, and unfortunately eventually die in buildings or the spaces that we create between them. Behind healthcare and the food industries, I think probably our industry contributes the most to our ability to lead healthy and happy and sustainable lives. And without property, there would be no homes, no offices, no food stores, no schools, doctors, surgeries, or hospitals. If we're clever, of course, our pursuit of good investment returns and the creation of great places should not be mutually exclusive occupations. If we are good, and we accept that good, well-designed places make people happy, make them more productive, more healthy in mind and in body, then the rules of the market should dictate that those places are more valuable. Product quality rises, customer satisfaction goes up, demand rises, and values increase. It's not rocket science to suggest that great places are more profitable places. My company, Landsec, is a platform that has a huge opportunity to make people's lives better. We are a REIT, which means that we exist to hold property in the very long term for the income that it generates. So under our influence, not only is it in our interest to design and build and curate places that work for people who use them and the people who pass by them every day, but also to manage them well so that we maintain their value over the very long term. And that means noticing and caring when those places become tired, or that people's needs change, or their desires change. Our work to make these places starts, like most simple things in business, with a blank sheet of paper. For example, does this work? Great. So for example, in 2016, we bid for the right to be the partners of Manchester City Council, Transport for Greater Manchester, and London and Continental Railways to develop 24 acres of central Manchester in a place called Mayfield, a site that's lain derelict for almost 50 years. It's a very common thing in cities all across the country, parcels of strategically important land in complex, fractured, often public ownership that sit unloved and unproductive. We were successful in our bid, and by the end of 2018, we'd secured an outline planning consent to start work, detailed work on designing a place that would deliver nearly 2,000 new homes, 2 million square feet of job-creating office space, 300,000 square feet of shops, retail, restaurants, bars, cultural spaces, and most importantly, 13 acres of beautiful new public green space. The most important thing to us in this project was to recognise that what we held in our hands We're 24 acres of land in one of the most historic and culturally significant and successful cities in the world. So the last thing we were going to do was start with a spreadsheet. What we actually did, and one of our first moves, was to hire a cultural master planner, a local academic called Dan Dubowitz from the Manchester School of Architecture. He now works on secondment with our company, and he's funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, who are our partners here today. Dan's work uncovered the reasons why we need to care so much about what we build. He showed that our site, which was productive for many centuries, had actually only been derelict for a very short proportion of its life. Over hundreds of years, it had been farmland, making use of the river. That's what it looked like when we started. And then through the 18th century, as Manchester became the world's first industrial revolution powerhouse, the textile printing mill was built on our site, and the river was used to power machinery and wash cloth. Now, in the 21st century, uncovered anew from 100 of years as a culvert, our river is a leisure amenity for families who visit the park that we finished there 2 years ago. Dan's work told us about people, about their cultures, their relationships to place, and the relevance of knowing about the past in order to understand the present and to make plans for the future. The thousands of people who lived and worked at Mayfield had rich lives with community and culture, and they built to fuel those lives. Their lives were financially poorer. Their work was undoubtedly back-breakingly harder than it would ever be now, but the communities were rich and their culture was deep. And this is what we need to understand if we are to make, build, curate, and manage our places successfully long into the future. At the heart of our site is an old Edwardian railway built at the turn of the 20th century. In case it's not obvious, I'm not great at multitasking, but I'm hoping you're enjoying the pictures. The old Edwardian railway building was built in the 20th century. In a brief from our public sector partners when we bid for this project, we were asked to present proposals that assumed the demolition and replacement of these buildings. I think we were the only bidder, Nick, I hope, won't disagree, that asked not to demolish these beautiful buildings, but to protect them as part of our master plan. What's important to us as developers at this point is not just the heritage, what the heritage buildings look like, and how that might inspire the design of our future buildings, but it was really important to understand what they were used for and how they might be used productively again. And at the end of 2019, we converted the oldest building into Depot Mayfield. It's now Europe's largest electronic music venue. It was voted by DJ Magazine in 2023 as the best nightclub in the world. And since then, 3 million people have paid to come through Mayfield to dance, to eat, to drink in the associated venues. And I tell you this, not just to show you what we did, but to explain how embedding the use of historic, beautiful buildings into our everyday work at Mayfield has set a tone. It's provided inspiration, and it's created some rules of how we're going to roll elsewhere on the site as we develop it out. We have evidence here from 3 million visitors that they're happy to come to Mayfield. They're happy to pay money, eat, drink, dance, and we'd be mad not to use that to shape what will happen in the new buildings we make. We won't be able to build a 10,000-person nightclub, but we will create a live music venue, and it will feel like Depot Mayfield. I don't think I've been in a design team meeting on this project where an architect or other member of our professional team has not made reference to the old buildings on site as an inspiration for their work. The new buildings will be better for it. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, work at Mayfield had ground to an end when the government was looking for shovel-ready projects. Our first 13-acre park was ready to go, and we were successful in securing a multi-million-pound commitment from the government to help us get Mayfield moving. So in 2022, we opened the first phase of our development, the first new public park in Manchester for 100 years. Not only is it beautiful and has served more than 100,000 visitors in the last year, but it is another reason why our buildings will be better. We are telling people that if they come to Mayfield and be our customers, they can live and work in a park. There won't be office buildings and blocks of flats with some green space outside. They will literally be buildings in a park and designed consequently. We're about to go to site shortly with the first of our 3 commercial buildings, one designed by Bennett's and the others by Morris & Co. We've just submitted planning permission for our first residential phases with buildings designed by Shed KM and Studio Eager at West. The work is good for a number of reasons. First, because they are good architects. Second, it's good because we demand an awful lot from our design teams in terms of quality of place that we want to make. And lastly, it's good because we chose to give ourselves a lot to live up to. We feel an enormous responsibility at Mayfield to maintain the positive impact that it's had on the community for centuries. And of course, we're creating a very different type of impact that is right for our time, but the principles are exactly the same. Thomas, your Humanise Principles toolkit says that people want to spend time in places that make them feel good. They want to feel safe, they want to feel welcome. The choices that we have made about the way we run our project before we've even started building any buildings has made that a more likely outcome. Now, this all sounds a bit noble, a bit nice. I don't want to leave you today with any impression that it's easy. It's not. It's easy to sign up to a set of principles that are hard to argue with, make a case that great places cost more, and that the way to deliver them is just to pay for them, with the implication being that they won't deliver a commensurate uplift in value to balance that increased cost. And conversely, it's also super easy to make the argument that this is all great, and we'd be doing it in spades if we could afford it, but it's not, so we won't. As with all things in life, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. If we care about these principles, and I do, and we believe that better, more beautiful places can be built on sensible financial foundations that deliver greater value, then our job is to work super hard to make it so. And this is where I fundamentally believe that we've got some work to do in our industry. We are essentially, even in the toughest economic times, a supply-driven business. We all know about economic cycles. We plan our investment accordingly. We only release to the market what we know we can sell. And that makes us inherently lazy. In much of our industry, it'll do drives us too much decision-making. There's little market competition. In some cases, there's low customer knowledge about what's good. And combined, this makes it really easy to do the minimum. If we believe that we should do more, we've got 2 jobs. First, we really have to care. We have to, at the very basic level, get out of bed every day with the intention to do things better. And secondly, we need to evidence the proposition that making more beautiful, more soulful, more connected places creates value for everybody, including our shareholders. That's where the sweet spot sits. Oh, that's unfortunate. So behind that black box, we own a rather tired, unloved shopping centre on the Finchley Road that Thomas knows well. Because it had got to the point of needing a bit more than a brush up, we've decided to put a black box over it. It was also transferred into Landsec's regeneration division, and it was an opportunity, we felt, to deliver thousands of much-needed new homes on a site that was severely underutilised, with a large surface car park and a load of big box retail. And over the last 3 years, we developed a scheme that will significantly upgrade the shopping centre, deliver 1,500 new homes, and sit within a really beautiful linear park that links back together West Hampstead with Finchley Road. Now, last year, after Humanise was published, Thomas very kindly came and stood on a box in the middle of our office. And he spoke to all of our colleagues, actually. I think there were very few that didn't come, about his book and about the ideas that are in it. He inspired us, genuinely, and he made us pause for thought. We recognised that we had an opportunity, because the building regulations have changed, to take a step back and think about whether we could do this better. So, inspired by Thomas's lecture, we asked if he could help us, and we began a conversation that led to the appointment of his team with Lisa and others to take a look at the buildings in our first phase, originally designed by HMM, And it was important that we didn't go back to the drawing board here, and quite honestly, that was not what was suggested either by Thomas and his team. Thomas and Lisa accepted our challenge and encouraged us to see that whilst we were happy with the overall design, there was so much more we could do if you looked at it through a different lens. And over the next few months, the team worked closely with mine on changes to the building that were, in the grand scheme of things, relatively modest, but in truth driven by some super clever thinking. It was an iterative process. They asked us to think about roof lines. They asked us to think about facade colours and textures. We spent a lot of time thinking about the ground floor, doors, windows, and other details that add richness to buildings. It was really important that they understood our need to deliver a viable scheme in terms of cost and complexity, and that we could either afford this or we could be confident that the value we were adding would be recovered through the project. Now, I think that was the hardest challenge because we really didn't change the cost plan. and I think we delivered a great success. I'm super happy with the results. And this will be built in the coming couple of years, and you will have the chance to go and judge us by our work. What I think we've proved is that not every project can or should be a radical statement piece. Smart incremental improvements can achieve significant benefits without excessive cost. We prioritised active frontages, human scale design. We improved the design of the ground floor, the texture, the material contrast, the fine detailing, and they've all gone a long way to making a change that's not extravagant, it's just better. It's not an enormous project. You can imagine that with an existing planning consent that was hard won, my development and delivery team were not in the mood for major changes to the buildings. But we were able to come up with a scheme that worked, a scheme that significantly changed the appearance of buildings, that made the planners happy, and crucially, we think we can deliver an enriched experience and therefore greater value. Homes in north central London are quite a competitive market. Again, it's not rocket science to imagine that more beautiful buildings will be more in demand. The clever play, though, is to understand how far you push it, because there's always a limit. I believe that you don't find that limit unless you give it a try. So what is my reflection on Thomas's book? Understanding the ambitions of the Humanise campaign and listening to people over lunch who are clearly an awful lot smarter than I am. I think I was invited here today because alongside some other people, I think you're hearing from Rob on the Earls Court development later, and I see Nick is here and some other friends. I'm a real world operator. I spend my days arbitrating between architects, builders, cost consultants, marketing and leasing professionals, politicians, community activists, and those who importantly represent our shareholders. In an uncertain economy, and let me tell you, it's quite frankly exhausting at the moment, what I am certain about is the reason why I get up in the morning. It's the reason why I decided to study as an architect, and it's the reason why I pursued the career that I did. It's because I fundamentally believe in the power of property and place building to impact positively on people's lives. And I mean all people, not just those with lots of money. And so that's how I come to work day to day, to work with those architects, builders, lawyers, agents. I ask them to direct their efforts in a particular way that creates the kind of places that make people happy. But I can only do that if also I can show that all of that extra hard work creates financial value. That's my license to operate. I don't work for a charity, and I believe that work firmly does create value. I believe that if you're clever, all the constraints we face in our business every day, mostly the fact that we don't build in a vacuum, but in the real world, with real world stresses, strains, and human complexity, can be overcome, and we can leverage that to make places better. Most of the starry buildings that appear on the front page of design magazines and win legions of awards have the luxury of being designed from scratch, and often with private money and perhaps a few less constraints. My world is an attempt to wrangle existing, operating, complex mixed-use places where any attempt to make change for improvement starts generally with the word difficult. But that shouldn't deter us. Our ambition, I believe, will make that work. We have to translate our creative design vision into commercially viable solutions We have to understand that good design isn't just about aesthetics, it's about creating places that attract people, customers, and long-term investment. What I do firmly believe, however, is that if we're clever, we don't have to choose between beauty and profitability. Smart, human-focused, good design is good business. Our job is to use that to inspire people, deliver results, to deliver experience-led places for everyone. Thank you.